Welcome to Inside Louisiana News. I'm Ted Baldwin. Our guest today is Dan Juneau, President of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, otherwise known as LABI. Welcome, Dan.
Great to be here, Ted.
Got some questions today. He's going to talk with us about the impact of the oil moratorium on the economy of Louisiana and this region, and Gulf Citizens United, which has been formed in response. One question I've got, first of all, to orient people, tell me a little bit about LABI and what its size is and what it does so we understand what your role is.
Sure. LABI is the combination State Chamber of Commerce State Manufacturers Association. We had two separate organizations in Louisiana prior to 1975. In 1975, the business community merged them to get a more effective overall business association to represent the interests of the business community, particularly at the state legislature, but also in regards to key congressional issues and federal issues as well. We have about 3,500 members in we have businesses in every parish in the state of Louisiana. We represent everything from large companies to mom and pop operations.
And all these are people living in the state and people that are in this community.
Working hard, paying their taxes, trying to make a living.
Tell me about the oil moratorium technically first, what it's about, before we talk about ramifications or anything else. Exactly what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about an action that's been taken by the federal government to, in essence, halt technically the deep water drilling beyond 500 feet out in the Gulf of Mexico. But as we found out, there's really a de facto moratorium for all drilling going on out there. There's very little, if any, permits being granted for shallow water drilling as well. This, of course, is in response to the BP rig disaster that happened out in the Gulf of Mexico and the subsequent oil spill. You know, we're obviously concerned about the economic impact that it's going to have on the state of Louisiana as a whole, and particularly South Louisiana. Back in 1986, I was general manager of the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce over in Lafayette, Louisiana. And something bad happened in 1986. We had a nationwide glut of oil and gas. Prices for oil and gas plunged, and it really gave us a decade of misery here in the state of Louisiana. I remember it quite well. It wasn't just rig workers losing their jobs and moving away. You had bankers, you had professionals, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, college professors, school teachers who didn't have a job anymore, or they didn't have a client base anymore. So they went to Nashville, they went to Orlando, they went to Dallas. So we're very concerned that we're perhaps facing a repetition of this with this moratorium. It's something that we would definitely never want to live through again.
Let's talk a little bit about oil's importance to Louisiana and to the nation.
Well, you know, when you talk about oil, people think about gasoline and cars. And certainly we refine a lot of oil in Louisiana for gasoline and jet fuel and diesel and a lot of other things. But we also have a thriving petrochemical industry here in the state of Louisiana that takes crude oil and turns it into the building blocks for manufacturing. You know, plastics, plastic pipe, just specialty chemicals, even pharmaceuticals have their base in oil. So when you're talking about oil, we're not just talking about cars and transportation. We're talking about a real solid part of the whole entire manufacturing process in the United States. 30% of the crude oil for the United States comes from the Gulf of Mexico. 75% of that comes from deep water drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. And if you look at projections, I've seen the LSU Center for Energy Studies projections going forward about the impact of deep water drilling on the nation's energy supply. It's critical. We've actually seen an increase in crude oil production in this country. It had declined for years and years and years, but due to the Gulf of Mexico drilling, in particular deep water drilling, the projections were for that to climb up and actually increase. Now, if that doesn't happen, that oil has to come from somewhere, because we're not going to throw a switch in the next year or two and say we don't need crude oil anymore. As I mentioned before, it's not just gasoline, it's the manufacturing process. And where it's going to come from is from foreign countries, many of which really don't like us too much. And that we often have to take young men and women in uniform from this country and put in places to try to protect that energy supply coming into us. So this is critical. It's critical on many levels. And I guess the thing that concerns us the most is we just really think that the moratorium is not a necessary thing to do. the president could have said, wait a minute, folks, we have a real terrible situation in the Gulf of Mexico. We need, first of all, to get it fixed, get it cleaned up, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then, put in place, get the bureaucrats out from the desk in Washington, get them out in the field, go to these companies, go to their corporate headquarters, inspect their records, go to the supply yards, go to the drilling platforms, and be sure that the technology that's in place is a technology that's safe. That could have been done relatively quickly, but when you say 6-month moratorium, that creates a real economic problem, because the oil companies don't own those rigs. Big international syndicates own those rigs. They pay $1 billion for those rigs in many cases, and they get day rates to lease those rigs of upwards of $500,000 a day. They're not going to sit there and wait for somebody who issued a governmental edict to remove a governmental edict. They've got to make the money off the rigs, and they're going to move them, and they're starting to move them. And when they move, jobs move with them.
Where are the rigs going?
A lot of them will go to Brazil. Brazil has a thriving offshore industry that's going on out there. Petrobras, the Brazilian oil company, the state Brazilian oil company, is really ratcheting up their exploration. Some of them will go off the African coast. There's a lot of drilling going on in the ocean off of Africa as well. One of them, I think, is going to Egypt, to drill there. So there's plenty of places for them to go. These are prized animals, these deepwater drilling rigs. So they will find a home. They will find a home very quickly.
Some people think it's time to spread the wealth around that the United States has capitalized on and had the enjoyment, if you will, or the benefit of these rigs all to themselves for so long. So maybe it's time that the world have a share in this. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right attitude. I'm saying that may be someone's attitude about this.
Well, and certainly people can have that attitude. What I would invite them to do is come talk to the people of the state of Louisiana, not just people who make their living on the rigs, but people who sell insurance to those people, to the local governments who need the tax revenues that come in to run the schools and build the roads and do the things that we need government to provide for. Same thing with the state government. We had a serious financial problem with governments before the blowout and before the moratorium. This is going to exasperate it greatly. So certainly I can understand that sentiment, but the folks that we're concerned the most about are the ones right here in Louisiana, who all of a sudden are going to find a hard time paying their house notes, their car notes, paying their insurance, their health insurance, their property insurance, buying groceries and doing things that we need to do, paying their taxes, for that matter. So while that sentiment might be out there, I think from those of us who are in Gulf Citizens United and the different groups who are working to end this moratorium, we're concerned about the folks here and the security of our national energy supply.